back to the Mintner method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we're going to break down the biggest matchup of the college football season to date. Now, that is going to be Georgia versus Alabama. And I know this is a matchup that a lot of people are trying to find an edge in and just trying to, dissect. You have two rabid fan bases, and they're, obviously going to have their reasons from one side to the other. I'll be completely frank. I don't care about either fan base. I'm not, obviously a fan of either. But for me, there's a couple things that stand out that I really think is going to lean one way to the other. Now, this is a very competitive game, and there are very few weaknesses for either of these teams. And now the sample size we're working with is only 3 to 4 weeks. So it's not like, solidified 10 games into the season. But the data is there to where we can make, we can make predictions based off what we've seen, especially from tendency data, which is almost as important as the efficiency data. So a couple things to check off the list to start. Both teams had byes last week, so they're both prepared for this game. And as always, they're always going to get up for this game, as it's been proven in the past. Alabama has had Georgia's number. I mean, anybody who watches mainstream ESPN or media or something of that nature, they know that Alabama has succeeded and pretty much just time after time again. Now, when we look at this matchup, there's a couple things that I want to dive into. We have our early downs data, and then our advanced statistics data overall. So if you've been watching anything I've been tracking over the last couple weeks, this is a matchup of strength on strength. So any team ranking, the teams ranking in the top 15 in either offensive early down EPA or defensive early down EPA, they went 16-7 against the spread last week. They went 10-5 against the spread the week before that. And those teams that have been in multiple weeks in a row have just dominated, And so that is an angle that we are just going to hammer home until it dies down. And that's just, it sounds lame, but we're not going to ignore something so obvious that also has common sense football. It's not a cherry picker stat where, you're like, they're undefeated when playing at home in the 2:30 window on the third Saturday of the month of September. We're not going to do shit like that. So basically, let's dive in real quick. As you can see, Georgia and Alabama are both very good. Strength on strength here, 18th in early pass EPA, and they're passing at 46.6% of the time. That ranks 44th in the country. Now, when I say early downs, I literally just mean first and second down. So to explain why we're using this, I'll do it pretty much every video just to kind of, in case someone's watching for the first time. Essentially, the more success you have on early downs, the less third downs, that you will have to convert on. Third downs are high leverage situations. It helps take away the volatility of that in the game, and it provides more consistency and more success in the long term. And it is proven to outperform the spread up to date this year. Now, these statistics are only versus FBS teams, so there are no inflated statistics here from playing a Division II team or FCS team or anything like that. So even though you have to look at the schedule still to kind of get some context, but you're not going to have these games where they scored 80-0 against Cordova High School or something like that. So you have to you can take that with some reassurance. So the thing that is a little concerning for Georgia is they are 67th in early rush EPA, and that is concerning simply because that's just not an elite number. You would like to see them at least in the top 30, especially for a team that is, the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. Now, that gives them an early down EPA rank of 32nd, whereas Alabama has been elite in the games they have played. And this was the biggest question mark, coming into the season, was whether or not their returning production was going to be good enough to translate and if they were going to be able to compete defensively, and whether or not Jalen Milroe would take the offensive system that Kalen DeBar brought over from Washington. Those were the two biggest question marks. I personally thought the defense would be the biggest question mark because I felt as if Jalen Milroe was going to excel in the system, which he has so far year to date. So when we go to the Alabama side of the ball, this is one thing that really stands out to me. So their early down pass percentage is 31%. Now, when you're looking at that, you're probably like, well, that's not the Washington, system. Last year they were throwing the ball at a very high percentage, and you would be correct. But let's not get it confused here. Michael Penix is not the athlete that Jalen Milroe is. And that's obvious. And they are using Milroe, and they're using him to his strengths, his dual threat ability and his athleticism. And it's led to incredible results so far. 8th in early down pass EPA, 15th in early down rush EPA, 9th overall. It's not going to – you can't really ask for much more than that. And then another weakness here, Georgia, 58th in early down rush EPA. Again, they're not abysmal 115th, but this is concerning. 58th is concerning when we're looking at it from that perspective. Now, we look at our advanced statistics here, and let me scroll down. I'll just search down to the game. All right, so we're searched down here. Now, we have some statistics here. We have predicted points per attempt, which is basically like an EPA alternative efficiency-wise. You have explosiveness, stuff rate, which is an offensive line statistic. Essentially, it's where a running back is tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. Offensive line yards, front seven havoc allowed, on so forth and so on. So the biggest thing here that we're looking for, all of these statistics, they include every game on the schedule, but they do not include garbage time. So that's kind of important, and garbage time is defined by college football data as, I believe it's any game in the, I want to say it's second quarter where a team, or in the third quarter where a team is leading by 28 or more, or in the fourth quarter when they're leading by the same margin, something similar to that. What garbage time looks like if you're watching a football game. So let's dive in here. Now, a concerning part, Georgia 101st in stuff rate. 20.6% of the time when they run the ball, they're getting tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. Now, that's not great. The offensive line yards number is a little more concerning to me because it's 89th. Again, a team that's not – this offense does not look elite. They look good, but they do not look elite. And a couple things that really, no explosiveness from the rushing side of the ball. And, this kind of correlates to what we were just talking about. Their efficiency rushing the ball, not fantastical. And then, they are very good, efficient in passing, average or so in explosiveness, lacking explosiveness from the rushing side of the ball. Now, when I look at the Alabama defense, they have, there's not many weaknesses here. Their front seven havoc could be better. Obviously, 76% is not great, or 76th overall is not great, 10.5%, not fantastic. Their secondary, though, is just incredibly athletic and just incredibly skilled. And this is a rarity. You rarely see the defensive backs producing more havoc or close to the same amount of havoc as your front seven. So as we're looking deeper into this, you can see good at limiting explosiveness while also being good at limiting efficiency. So it feels as if we have a Georgia offense that is good but not great. And that was not the expectation going into the season because they were expected to be a prolific offense. even I wrote about that and said that in a previous episode. They were going to be one of the top offenses because of the returning production, they had very good returning production from a very good unit last year. That has yet to materialize, and I don't know if that's going to materialize in this type of game environment. Now, when we look at Alabama from the offensive side of the ball and Georgia from the defensive side of the ball, this is a strength-on-strength matchup. Okay, this is going to be a very interesting game because you have Alabama extremely efficient, number one explosive team in the country. Georgia extremely efficient on defense, number one at denying explosiveness in the country. So the biggest, I would say, the biggest, weakness is going to be 93rd in stuff rate. Okay, that's not great. Offensive line yards pretty average. Front seven havoc allowed pretty average. But they're excelling from a rushing standpoint, ninth in predicted points per attempt, and third in explosiveness. Now, this right here, the defensive back havoc, is something to think about when we're looking at this even deeper, and that is that 111th, you kind of are hoping to have more of a ball hawking secondary, simply because Milroe is going to be on the run. He's going to be making plays. His athleticism is going to be a factor in this game. It's just there's no way around it. And so when we look at the efficiency side of it, again, Georgia very efficient. Top 10 in both, or top 15, in explosiveness allowed, and and very good in efficiency, 34th and 4th. So this is what is concerning to me. When I look at the schedule, I cannot get over the Kentucky game. It's really the only game of merit. The Clemson game, I felt like they were going to dominate that game. Clemson is not good. I don't care what they did last week. I don't care what they do next week. They're not good. Dabo Swinney is stuck in the dark ages. They're just not good. They're not championship team material. But the Kentucky game here is just mind-boggling. Okay, 13-12, a game they arguably should have lost. 15 of 24 throwing the ball. Just not a good game for Carson Beck. Now, when we go to, excuse me, let me scroll down to him real quick. When we look at it from a team perspective, we can look at the game log rushing. Against Kentucky, also not fantastic. 102 rushing yards, 30 attempts, 3.4 yards per attempt. Again, those type of archaic stats are not always something we look at, but they do have merit when we're looking at just this overall success type of game, And they did not look good against Kentucky, and I just can't get over that fact. Now, obviously, we can go back to last year and look at the Alabama game where they struggled rushing the ball against them. These teams are not the same, so we don't want to dive too far into that. But we can look at the game log and see, Beck played fine. 243 yards, 21 to 29. But when I look at Jalen Milroe, there's a reason we had him as a Heisman contender, and now he's third favorite to win the Heisman. He's just electric overall. This year, this system is just look at the efficiency: 11.3 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's only averaging 17 attempts a game. So obviously, there hasn't been none of the games have been really competitive. The Western Kentucky game, South Florida. The South Florida game is a lot closer than that score indicates, but it felt like they were going to win regardless. That's just kind of what it felt like. But these other games, he's not being asked to do really much. He only had 9 attempts in the Western Kentucky game, and he still threw for 200 yards. Like, this is just like, obviously those aren't, we're not going to take a lot from those statistics, but they are eye-opening to see that this is an offense that looks completely different than when Tommy Rees was the play caller, which we've harped on endlessly in numerous episodes. But this is kind of what I thought was interesting. The rushing upside is really there. I mean, going into Wisconsin, even though Wisconsin is not, Wisconsin of old, but to go in Camp Randall and just the game's over by the second quarter that's pretty impressive. Now, obviously, this is a different beast playing Georgia. The line, I believe, is at 2.5, depending on where you're at. Look it up real quick. Two and a half, just like we said. I am going to be leaning towards Alabama if you haven't caught on to the analysis. I just think Milroe is a game changer, and he can make the game. He can change the game environment in one play. And I mean, they are playing in Alabama. Now, I'm not saying I'm not this giant proponent of home teams being so much better at home. I think that's kind of been proven over time. But I think that Alabama is really just going to show up here, and I think they have a chance here to fill that that Heisman narrative, right? The one where there's a Heisman moment for Milroe, and I think this is going to be the start of his campaign. Essentially, I just think they're better. I think DeBauer. I mean, a lot of people, are going to say Kirby Smart is the better coach. I think that can be true, as in the same breath that DeBauer gets more out of his team. I think that's true also. We've always talked about coaches who get less, like a Jimbo Fisher, who all that talent couldn't get anything out of it, right? So, but I think I'm going to be going with Alabama here. 2.5 money line, however you want to go with it. I think that's going to be a very, very tough environment, and I think they're going to excel where Georgia is not necessarily weak, but it is their weakest areas, which is in defending the run and just being average-ish on offense. So that's going to be it for today's episode and video. I'm going to try to do more content this week. I know several of you have wanted more breakdowns, more videos. Just life is busy, so I have not been able to do as much as I would like. But I am going to try to churn out more this week, and so that way we have more to look at, bigger slates, better games, and we'll just keep getting after it. All right. Well, as always, thanks for thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you want to reach out to me, you can leave a comment on the video. You can reach out to me on Twitter. You can email me at themintnermethod@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, all that jazz if you want to see more. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.